very, very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Ginelle. Ginelle is the co-owner of Adinkra Farm, a 42-acre property in New Lowell, Ontario, where she leads intergenerational retreats, camps, team building, and rites of passage and farm training programs for youth, adults, and children. Adinkra Consulting offers organizational development and training based on Afrocentric values and African ancestral practices. She's also a mother of 5, a Susu banker lady leading traditional savings and credit associations, and CEO of York Region Children's Aid Society. Recently, she took on the role of Literary Review Circle panelist for the Charity Report, an online news magazine for the charity sector. She is a champion of mutual aid networks and collective economic development solutions. So please welcome Ginelle.
Hello, hello, hello. Well, good evening. So the first screen that you're going to see is just a picture of the farm property. So I'm sitting up in that little nook that you see there with the, that's where I am. I'm looking through the other side of that window. And on that window, we have an Adinkra symbol, Jinyame. And on the property, we have 7 different symbols. And that's what we've named the property. And if you're curious about them, you can look up Adinkra symbols online, and you could learn about the different stories and philosophies that they support. And they kind of tell us about a way of life. If you look at the picture with the snow, with Adinkra Farm in the snow, you can see one there, which is the symbol of 2 fish, teeth and tongue biting each other. So it's these symbols that we've chosen are about unity, togetherness, the messages around knowledge and community sharing. So Adinkra Farm is located on Anishinaabe land here in the province of Ontario. And really, we go by the principle of Ubuntu, or in Swahili, umoja, around unity, believing that we are because, or I am because we are. We have a vision for Adinkra Farm, and our vision is to help people to reclaim aspects of our ancestral heritage. We do that through some of the activities that I'll get into a little bit later. Build, which is about building not only structures on the farm, but it's about building institutions and connections in our community. And finally, grow. And with that last pillar, what we talk about is growing not only food on the land, but also growing in our understanding, and all of these together, reclaim, build, and grow, help us to form a sustainable community. So we value collective intergenerational cooperation and action. And almost everything that we do, we can relate it directly to Afrocentric principles. So this one is related to Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, Kujichagulia, which you might recognize from the Kwanzaa principles around self-determination, Ujamaa, which is about collective work and responsibility, Ujamaa, which is very important for what we're talking about today, cooperative economics, and the Ma'at, of which there's so much information. I would just have to tell you to go and take a look at that online. But in particular, reciprocity is one of the Ma'at principles that relate to the idea of our interdependence as people. So just to let you know what's happening with us, we do have camps, retreats, and events ongoing right now on the farm. But we launched in 2020, in the middle of COVID, a cabin build project. And we were able to raise funds from our community members, from investors, and so on, to build some on the farm. That would be for housing farm workers in particular, but it could be used for other purposes at other times. We plan to put in showers and toilets because people kind of don't like using outhouses, generally speaking. And so we're looking at that. We have a studio space that we plan to renovate. We are in conversation about launching a farm school to teach people how to reconnect with the land. And we envision having a multi-use center in another few years and within the decade. Behind me here, you can see, but these are our live cushions right here. We have a project right now actually supports about 7 different Black-owned businesses to produce these cushions here. So the materials are made directly in Ghana, imported here by a Ghanaian company. They were sewn in Ghana by an entrepreneur there. So we've got the textile company, the broker who helped with finding the entrepreneurs there to do the work, then the shipping company, and then when it came here, we hired another company to help with the finishing, because some of the zipper, well, we didn't put zippers on from Ghana, because if you've ever had clothing from Ghana, the zippers don't really last very long. So these are higher quality. And then we're using a marketing company run by some teenagers to market the cushions online. And then, of course, it supports Adinkra Farm. So all along the way, we've supported several different African-owned businesses in order to produce these cushions. And they're going to be sold online. And actually, the first time I'm going to be traveling to the Black Canadian Summit in Nova Scotia, and I'm going to take some of them without the filling because they would be too much to carry with me to sell there. So summer activities, we, as mentioned, summer camps, and we have had to curtail those during COVID, but we have had people come up and camp. So in the top photo, you see we had about 21 people coming in from the city last year. The reason that they came was because of um, well, because of violence in the city, and they were part of a men's group that was talking and working with them on how to be entrepreneurs, how to get jobs, how to pursue things other than life that is relatively dangerous. So we also are into, of course, farming. And so we work with farming cooperatives. Usually they come up and plant on the land. And we ourselves are garlic farmers, are burgeoning garlic farmers, because I think this is our third crop of garlic, and we're hoping that it will survive. So that, and I am getting into planting an herb garden, and we're looking into foraging and working with another Black-owned business to some of the herbs that grow naturally on the property and turn them into teas. This highlights how we got started in this intergenerational journey around having summer camps and March break camps for kids, and they work in the camp as they grow with the camps, and they run it. It's really child-centered and child-run. We do a sketch of what the program is going to be, but the children, when they come, they have a choice as to what activities they're going to do, and they help us plan out the program, and we also have activities that they create for us. And the last event that we had, they decided to flip the script and not have a performance for the parents, but they had stations where the parents came and performed for them. So it's always interesting to allow their creativity to come on out. So we have wellness events, and there you see one of our local, that man is from Innisfil, and he does something called dangling yoga. And me in the picture there is with a young woman who started Uplift Black, a local organization that advocates for Black students in the school system. So we held a day of wellness and pampering for the women who do that work. And finally, we had a wellness event that was also run by a Black owned a person who does fitness. And that's what it was all about. It was for educators, a lot of Black educators, but anyone who wanted to come could come. And this is the final slide where I just talked about the fact that with COVID, we haven't been able to have the overnight camps. But what has happened is that our business has moved into day retreats. So we do 1-day retreats, and the latest one that we had was 30 students come for cultural awareness training, and I taught them how to head wrap, to play the Awari game. They spoke with an elder, and they also had a lesson in drumming with my husband. So that's a quick synopsis. And as you can see, we do weddings and all kinds of events at the farm. So that's a quick synopsis of what's of all of the business lines and all the opportunities for people to connect at a Dinkra farm.
Well, thank you so much, Ginelle, for sharing your insight into your work and your passion. I think the values around intergenerational cooperation and action are so well connected to this evening's event, as well as your support for Black-owned businesses with Adinkra Decor. And all the activities sound really great too, especially the Wellness and Pampering Day. I definitely love to check that out too. We'd also like to pause here and open it up to see if anyone has any questions for Ginelle.
I loved seeing how much can be done on a farm, and it's not just like you have chickens or cows or something like that. That was just a big takeaway. And then also just so much creativity, as well as my questions about, was this like a passion project, or was it something that you saw and grew and grew yourself through as well?
Well, it is a passion project. It is something that me and my husband care deeply about, because when we were younger and we were doing activist work, and we've been working in what they now call DEI was our life type of things. You know, you happen to be the Black person there, and you need to speak up. And one of the things that we found is all of the youth groups and the organizations, they always were looking for space, and it was very difficult to find. And then when you're using space that is in other people's control, they they tend to want to control the types of activities. So we wanted to have a space that was decidedly African centered. We didn't make necessarily the parameters around exactly what would happen here. So it's open. We accept all suggestions and see if we can do it. And so that's how the wellness retreats came about. And so on, the thing that is passion for us is like we say, the reclaiming of our cultural practices and ancestry and so on. And then the building of institutions and the growth of our minds, but also our reconnection to the land, because I think that we are people of the land. And the experience of the transatlantic slave trade interrupted that, and we want to reconnect with who we truly are.
Thanks. And I'm seeing Deb as well has her hand raised.
Thank you, Ginelle. That was a tremendous overview of the farm. I really wasn't aware of the extent of the activities being done on the farm, and that's fantastic. And I wish you well as you develop, as your organization develops. But I just want to kind of talk a little bit, or ask a little bit, as you as a Black entrepreneur entering into the area or the arena in terms of looking at raising capital, looking at being able to getting funding. I know that's something that Black entrepreneurs have been, we found difficulty around. Were you able, you and your husband, able to navigate in the Canadian space?
Right. So that's an excellent question, and it's something that is an ongoing, I guess, test case for us, because we've been living on the farm for about 13 years. And one of the things that we were never in was a rush to do any of this, to develop any of this. So we spent a lot of time listening and learning and testing out, and being, parents of young children and also both working. It was, it first, we financed the foundations of it. And so we wanted to make sure that we eliminate some of the risks for people in our community to participate. But I'll tell you, at a time when I went out with an ask for fundraising to do the build, because again, we're not that we're not in favor of asking for government money, but we really believe that we need to build a critical mass of community support first for the type of project that we're doing. We're doing a project that requires broad-based community support. So we had to build that first and build the trust first and the experience of it. Because one thing about racism is that sometimes we internalize that self-doubt and that message that we don't know how to do those things, and we're not good with those things, and so forth. So, and I can tell you that when we first introduced the idea that we were having this farm, some people thought, oh yeah, nice dream, it's not going to happen. Um, our community is not, going to support that, and so forth. And we have been very deliberate about slowly building that support to the point where during COVID, which I was going to tell you, when there was a great deal of uncertainty, we launched a campaign. And I thought that, being a fundraiser in my past, I thought that we would need until from October to March to raise the money. And by December, we closed off on all pledges because the response. And so the lesson from that for me was around taking time to build your brand, to build your market, so that people understand. Because there were some people who called us in January and said, did I miss out on the opportunity to give, to participate? And some people, even though we offered it as you invest and then we'll pay you back eventually as the business produces, some people said, no, here's a donation. We support what you do. So I just want to say that we took the time to build the brand and to establish the relationships with community first. And then now I think there's a lot of support, and I still am not ready to market a Dinker farm because we seem to get enough business to keep us busy without doing that, without actually going out and saying, come and do your event here.
Yeah, underscore the part where you said, take your time to build our brand. And I know that one of our board members, Damon, it will be, he's probably smiling as you say that, because he's always saying that to us, take the time to ensure that we build the brand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, folks, for asking questions, and thanks, Ginelle, for your responses. We will have to move on to our story activity now. We are all able to gain a lot from that conversation, so thank you so much. We are now going to move on to our storyteller presentation from Keicia and Shantel. So, as you mentioned previously, Keicia and Shantel are a mother and daughter pair who work together in entrepreneurship. Keicia has been working in the accounting field for over 20 years, having worked in several senior management positions, and she decided to use her strong technical business background to help small businesses to flourish while building her brand Cardwell Financial. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Applied Accounting and is a chartered professional accountant with ICAO and a fellow chartered certified accountant with the ACCA. Keicia is married and the mother of 3 girls, Shantel, Sharissa, and Shanique, and firm family values will always be front and center of her priorities. Her mantra is, don't put your mouth in motion before your brain is in gear. Shantel, Keicia's daughter, knew that she wanted to be an accountant from an early age, despite her love for numbers being quite balanced with her love for arts and social justice. She's in her 5th year as an accounting professional and holds a BA in management and is currently pursuing the final level of the CPA program. She's known for her strong leadership abilities, objectivity, and not shying away from those difficult conversations. Shantel is passionate about volunteering and is involved in several outreach initiatives, including sponsoring an LGBTQ refugee with Rainbow Railroad. Shantel has no children, but has had plenty practice with her 2 cats and her younger sisters, which I relate to as a dog mom. So please welcome Keicia and Shantel.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah. You already introduced us, so in the interest of time, I think we will jump right in. So I basically am the primary at Cardwell Financial Associates, and we are an accounting firm that provide full support to small and medium-sized businesses, both whether in the for-profit space or the non-for-profit, and things that we offer like include bookkeeping, CRA filing, and compliance, business coaching throughout the steps from cradle to grave for entrepreneurs, and really helping them to set up their systems and processes. Is there anything that you want to add to the introduction, Chantal?
Nope.
Okay, so they got you well. Okay, so in terms of the connection between Shantel and I, I would say I often joke that we're sisters, and as you can see, we are even twins. We're twinning with our glasses. right?
Stop
She
it.
hates that because she chose it first. So we do have a close bond, and we share almost everything. Um, with we have a friendly relationship. When we get together, we do jabs at each other, but I think ultimately why we are a good pairing for business is that we do have mutual respect for each other, and I trust her 100%. So her decision is my decision. We don't always agree, but once we make that decision, then we're both behind it 100% and we make it happen. So why did we get into business together? When I had this concept of the business, I didn't want it to be a company that was limited to me. I didn't want it to work when I work it. I didn't want it to die after I'm gone, right? So I wanted it to be, I wanted to transcend
Longevity.
generation, right? So I wanted to transcend the generation. So even if we never have another accountant in our generation, and we do have quite a few, I wanted it to be that this is yours and you do what you want with it. Sell it if you want, hire an accountants to actually run it, do what you must, but this is yours. That's what I saw as the future. So what better way to really ensure that business continuity than to, let the future of the business be my partner in the present. So I necessarily just I began with the end in mind. And I asked Chantel to join forces. I'm not sure if it was a question, but she was right there with me, right?
Yes.
Uh, so before I hand over to Chantel, I wanted to talk about kind of like the, what we kind of both bring to the table. I would say we complement each other. Um, we both contribute to the business. One would think that, okay, it would be me cracking the whip and say, listen, do as I say. I think that worked until maybe she was about 18. And then after that, she was a big woman. So
More like 5, but
it was always the, so one of the things that I encouraged when Chantal was growing up was, I know personally when I was growing up, it's like, as a child, you are to be seen and not be heard. And I hated that. And so I did not want to kind of enforce that onto my kids. And so they always had an opinion. And so I wanted to know what they think. And so they were a part of the conversation. And so I think for me, in terms of what I bring to the table, it's really my experience and my knowledge in the field, and really my hunger for entrepreneurship. Having worked in various levels of the corporate world, I was hungry to build my brand. And so we work hard and very hard for people. Why not work hard for yourself? And so Chantel brings that fresh idea. So with this relationship that I talk about, it's easy for her to say, okay, mom, what about that? Her generation, I think, believes in working smarter and not harder. They don't do things because that's the way you always do it. They try to figure out how to make it easier. I think they're lazy, but that's real. They really want to work smarter rather than harder, right? So she really has strong leadership skills, and she thinks outside of the box. So technically, by us working together, we get the best of both worlds. I think in terms of being able to target a wider and satisfy a wider demographic based on our age differences.
talk about all the downsides of working with your mother. Um, so when it comes to the challenges of us working as an intergenerational pair, as my mom said, she raised us to be opinionated. And when you raise a strong Black woman going against another strong Black woman, we're going to butt heads. So we both tend to be control freaks, and we want to have control over different things. So that is something that we often, we butt heads about. And then another thing that's challenging for us is that we're at different stages of her career. So my mom, she's a lot more experienced. She's been working in the industry for a longer time. As for me, I'm at this beginning stage trying to figure out where my path is going to be. So where she has done the work and gotten to her level and she's gained all that experience, I'm still trying to navigate what that experience looked like for me. So that is kind of like something else that we butt heads about, because she sees a vision that I don't see as well, because I don't have the same level of experience as she does. So I'm still trying to find my footing and finding my own path while she's already figured that out for herself. And even though it's a strength seeing the world differently, it can also be a challenge as well, because sometimes when you see the world so differently, you have to stop and be able to say, okay, this is the way I see the world, and explain that to somebody else and be able to say, okay, I know you don't see the world this way. How can I better help you get acquainted with the world from this vision? Where for her, she's already been doing that all her life, but now the roles are reversed and now she's learning from me, and it's a change of dynamics. But she's becoming more and more open to that. So that definitely one of the challenges of us as partners. What makes us a strong pair? A lot of people say our banter. We are like children sometimes. We just poke fun at each other, and it's just always light and there's levity behind the seriousness. We're family first and business partner second. As mom says, she called me her sister, which makes me very uncomfortable. But I would say that we are friends as well. Being able to truly say that my mother is a friend, and that, at the end of the day, if I have a problem, I don't feel scared to talk to her differently than I talk to another coworker or a friend, because we do have that relationship, and that does make us a strong pair. And finally, in terms of what else makes us a strong pair, is the ability to have understanding with each other, where there is, based on that mutual respect, I can go to her and tell her that I disagree, and explain why I disagree, and her listen and learn and be open to that. The communication skills that we have as humans, and I think it's because I've been doing that all my life since I was like 10. I'll be like, this is what you're doing wrong, and she doesn't say you're a child and that's, and shut the conversation down. But I've developed that skill and that ability to communicate and say that this is what I believe in, and these are the reasons why I believe in, and having that space and that floor to communicate that with someone, not because she's older than me, but in a space that it's mutually respected. So yeah. So how do intergenerational partnerships strengthen our business? So mom already touched on both of those things. Being a family first is definitely something that, at the end of the day, we could fight about the direction of the business. We can fight about how we see things, but we are always mom and daughter and sisters, as she says, and be able to come back and let that be that, and that doesn't impact our relationship. And in terms of business, that would always be a good step forward, because we'll always have that strong relationship first. And longevity and sustainability of the business, at the end of the day, if something happens to me and I can't work for a bit because school is hard, or life is hard, mom can take over. And if the same thing happens, we have that ability to sustain each other, because we have that trust in each other to keep things going. And there's not worry about what happens when you turn 60 and you can no longer do it, or you no longer want to do it. We have that plan already in place that makes not something that you're worried about. So you can just think about growing without limitations, which is a great place to be at in business. And for the final question, mom, you can start. What advice would you give folks starting a business together?
So if you are thinking about starting a business, especially an intergenerational business, my one solely advice to you is don't think small. right? Think enterprise. So often we we limit ourselves to our one skill. For example, um, I may want to start a business and I do Keisha's hairdressing or Deborah's painting. Why not the DN group or the KC enterprise? I just want to kind of tell you a story. In 1882, 140 years ago, an 18-year-old baker named George Weston. I often tell the story. He started his business. His business was really baking bread and selling it in Toronto. He later became one of the biggest baker in Toronto. When he died in 1924, his business did not die with him. Today, George Weston Group is the enterprise we know as which include the Loblaws, including Wholesale Club, No Frills, President Choice Financials, Shoppers Drug Mart, Superstore. They own the Joe Fresh brand, PC brand, No Name brand, and they also have another arm called Choice Properties, where they build commercial and residential spaces. So in 2020, their revenue was $55 billion. That's billion dollars with a B. So if he was just thinking of baking a few breads, I mean, they would not have had the intergenerational impact they have. So that's what I think about when I think about starting a business or starting an intergenerational business. I don't want Keicia or Cargill Financial to die with me. I want it's to transcend generations.
If I could add to that, if you are entering into a partnership similar to ours, I'd say enter as equals. Don't look at it as I'm building this up for you and that you are below me or secondary. I think entering into a position where this is not just for me, it's for us, and your input matters and your impact matters to the organization and the growth of it. So I think entering as equals is key. And the final thing I'd say is that if you're waiting for everything to fall in line and for all your plans to be perfect, it will never happen. You have to take the plunge, even if it's not perfect. The thing about action is you can learn from it and you can make a decision, and it could be the best decision or it could be the worst decision. But you know what? It's a decision that helps you to make a better decision. So being able to just take the plunge and make action happen is always my go-to for giving people advice, because you never know until you do. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. I think, that piece about mutual respect and trust is so important and very evident in the way that you both speak about each other and communicate. And I think you've both really highlighted the amazing aspects of intergenerational partnerships and entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for sharing. We do have time for one question, and I think one popped up in the chat. So this was around the mantra, I believe the mantra of being seen and not heard. And the question is, I wonder how much that mantra could impact the Black community taking the leap of faith to become entrepreneurs. Very interested to know if others feel similar, or Keisha's experiences as an entrepreneur with regards to that.
Okay, so the seen and not be heard, it was something that or my parents' generation thought that kids should be kids, and when you hear adults speak, you should not butt in. So we know you're there and you're behaving yourself, but don't butt in into our conversation. So you wouldn't. So for me, it made me have less of a voice when I entered the workspace. I was like, okay, is it okay for me to speak now, when technically people are looking for me to contribute and say what I thought about different things, just process the situation and then add my value. And so I struggled with coming out and actually contributing. So it took me a longer time to transition into the work world. So I thought it was an impediment rather than something that helped me. And so I didn't want to pass that on. So that was kind of something that I decided to sever in me teaching my kids.
Adding to that quickly, yeah, it's definitely something that I don't struggle with. My voice is my own, and it doesn't limit me whatsoever. I feel very confident and very strong to say my piece. And I think something that not being taught that, that my voice isn't important is I learned from an early age that no matter how old you are, respect should be mutual. And if I show you respect as a child or as someone who is younger, you owe me that respect as well. So being able to communicate that well with adults and being able to say, I get it, you're older, you've experienced that, but I've also lived, and my experiences matter. And being able to stand in my ground and say those things confidently and securely is something that is valuable in the entrepreneur space and in just living as a Black woman in North America, for sure.
Well, thank you both. I love that piece about my experiences matter. And that's something I'll definitely take with me. So thank you both.